Hello. So today we're going to talk about something that started over 4,000 years ago. It is something that is used daily and it has an awesome origin and history, and I think it's really important, and that is the English alphabet. So I've been actually researching this topic for a little bit over 2 weeks, and I thought I was going to kind of go into this and not really care about it, but I've actually found a really big interest in it, and I think it's really, really cool. So the English alphabet has a very interesting origin, history, and story. And today we're going to be talking about those two things. Today we will be talking about the origin, so where it all started, how it started, and who started it. And then we're going to be talking about the history and growth. So talking about it from how it grew through different centuries and how it is what it is today. So now that I've got your interest, in order to really understand where this all came from, we're going to have to go 4,000 years back into Egypt. So a man by the name of Dwighty, I think that's how you pronounce it, in 2020 had an article published called Scholars Believing This, and it is, this man has a bachelor's degree in archaeology, and he's been studying this for 16 years now, and he's actually been to Egypt. And he believes that in 1800 and 1900 BC in Egypt is when this all started, which I think is so cool. And this all started with a simple thing of hieroglyphics, which we all know are what Egyptians used. And it is, instead of letters, it was more of symbols and depictions, and kind of their way of documenting important things that had happened in their day. So we're going to talk about a group called the Phoenicians, and 700 years later, these guys actually created 22 letters. So I'm going to show a little picture of not all 22, but of just the 3, and how I think it's kind of interesting. And this actually came from a woman named Laura Shum, and this was in 2018, and she actually, she was a researcher for I think 6 years, and she talked about how the Phoenicians kind of used their symbols and created the letters that we have now today. So here's a letter A, we all know that. And the Phoenicians actually created the letter A. It looked like this, an upside down A, and they used that because of an ox head. So then we have B, and the Egyptians actually started this one, and they actually used it because it was it looked like a house, and that's what the Phoenicians used it as. And then it got passed on to a B. So the Phoenicians are a really, really big play in this, which I find really interesting. So this was used through the Mediterranean, South Africa, and Northern Europe. And it was the first real alphabet, actually. And eventually the Romans took turn creating the Greek alphabet, and they added F and S. And this alphabet was very similar to what we have now, except it didn't have the letters J, U, V, and W. So now that we've talked about the origin of everything, now we're going to be talking about how it really grew throughout centuries, which I think is so cool. So we're going to be talking about Old, Middle, and Modern English. So, so a woman by the name of Bernardine Ricoma in 2018 wrote an article of the origin of English alphabet. It was for a post of Transition Origins, I think is what it was called. And she has traveled and researched this topic for over 22 years. So she's very, very enthused. And so in the Old English, this started in the 11th century in like AD, not BC. This is classified as Firthorc. And a lot of Scandinavians and other like northern sea cultures, probably like Vikings and stuff, used this. And it had 26 characters. So not only did it have letters, but it also had sounds. And the sounds that these guys used were owned, win, thorn, eth, and ash. And it is later turning it into 31 characters and sounds, I guess. An example for this is actually Beowulf. So I'm going to show you guys what it looked like really quickly, like what the Old English was written out to be. And this actually came from a man named George Julian. So here's what it looked like. This is Old English. This is the Beowulf poem of what it looked like. And this George Julian actually, I don't know if you guys can see that, but he actually translated it into modern English. So this was in 2018, and he has been a researcher for about, I think 20 years. and he's done a lot of Old English writing, which I think is awesome. So I was going to read off a little bit of this actually. So this is, like I said, Old English from Beowulf, and this is from the poem. And this translates into, I'm only going to read a little bit, but this translates into: summoning remembered glories in his main strength, the war king struck a violent blow with his blade, which struck fast in the dragon's head. That's Old English. Now we're going on to another thing called Middle English, and this is in the 13th century AD. So this is when a lot of these words were kind of flipped and eventually used into, they replaced thorn and eth with th, and then they actually replaced win, that sound, with uu, but it was later translated into w. And an example of this is Wife of Bath. So this one looked a lot more like fancier English, I would say. It's more of like a fancier cursive, if you can see that. A lot different from Beowulf, obviously. And then we have modern, which is now, and that is Great Britain in the 15th century, and it's more standardized then. And it actually, a man named Robert Cowdrey in 1604 created his own English dictionary, and it was called the Table of Alphabetical, which I think is really, really awesome. So last but not least, now that we've gone through everything, I think it's really, really important for us to really understand the origin of all of this. I think it's really fascinating, and I think with going over everything, I think we can really say thank you to the Egyptians, because without them, we wouldn't be here with this alphabet that we have today.